Your Majesties, Mr. Foreign Minister, dear friends, I think Luxembourg should be very, very proud of having those guests here. In no other European country that I know, a foreign minister and a royal family would attend such a meeting. You really deserve it. A few weeks ago, I was in Germany, and the Solidarity Group of Germany, Solidarity Group with the Palestinians, wanted to attend the meeting, their annual meeting. We had to travel 250 kilometers from Berlin to a Copt monastery, because this would be the only venue that would host them with an old Egyptian monk. And he was the only one who was ready to host them, because in Europe today, fighting for justice, fighting against occupation, fighting for human rights became anti-Semitism. And I think today, the main challenge of all of us today is to say no to this manipulation. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for coming, and thank, obviously, Martin and Eliane and Michel for this wonderful occasion. I know how many efforts you paid. I want to say a personal word, if you may allow me. 40 years ago, I was chosen by the State Department, God forbid, the American State Department, to come to a trip in the United States as one of those future leaders of the world. And I did it. I'm not sure I would go for a State Department tour today. I'm not sure the State Department would have invited me today. But then we were all young and innocent. And then I met this young Luxembourgian leader. He was a little older than me, Robert Goebbels, who is with us today. I didn't see him ever since then. We were sailing together on a boat. We were sailing together on a boat on the Mississippi, if you remember. And both of us had dreams for our future. You became a minister. I remained a journalist. But you know, dreams not always are fulfilled. Exactly. But it gives me a special excitement to meet you after 40 years, I think, that we didn't meet. And I'm looking forward to meet you tomorrow in private. And this gives me also a very good feeling, not only because the royal family and the foreign minister is here. I really feel, it's my first visit to Luxembourg, I really feel so much pleasance in this place. I don't know, I was walking yesterday with Catherine, with my partner. People are smiling at each other. I didn't see it for a long time. People are greeting each other. What's going on in this country? And by the end of the day, so many people are coming to pay solidarity with the Palestinians. What can you ask for more? So I'm really grateful for this opportunity. We are now in a very special stage in the so-called Israeli-Palestinian dispute, which I don't like to call the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. Nobody called the French-Algerian as a dispute. There was no French-Algerian dispute or conflict. There was a French occupation of Algeria, and there is an Israeli occupation of Palestine. And it's not about a dispute, it's about justice, it's about the occupation. But we are standing today in a very special moment, because I think the masquerade is over. The masquerade is about to end. The belief that the Israeli occupation is a temporary phenomenon, that it's all about to end very soon, just Israel will find the Palestinian partner, or there will be prospects for peace and the occupation will be ending. This illusion must end. We have to realize the Israeli occupation is there to stay. It was always there to stay. I want to claim here today that there was never an Israeli government who really meant to put an end to the occupation. Not the Nobel Prize winners, Rabin and Peres, and not Netanyahu. None of them had a real intention to put an end to the occupation. But let's leave the past. Today, it's time to realize, after 52 years of occupation, that this is a permanent phenomenon. It is not there to go. We are now, today in 2019, much farther from ending the occupation than 10 years ago or 20 years ago. There is no status quo, because by the time that we are sitting here, more settlements are built and the occupation gets stronger and stronger, and we have to face it. It is there to stay. The second means that we have to handle with is the means of the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel is a democracy for its Jewish citizens. But if Luxembourg would have declared that part of the country is a democracy and the other part will live under a brutal military tyranny, would anyone consider Luxembourg as a democracy? Can you be half pregnant? Can you be half democratic? By now, we should realize, if the occupation is permanent, it is part and parcel of Israel. It defines Israel. And this notion that Israel is this villa in the jungle, the outpost of the West, the outpost of the liberal values of the West, the common values with the EU and the democracy, this doesn't go hand to hand with the reality. Half an hour away from my home, there is one of the most brutal tyrannies on earth today. And I don't exaggerate, because the Israeli occupation, the Israeli tyranny in the West Bank and the siege over Gaza is today one of the most brutal regimes. We have to face it. So as long as it was temporary, you might say, you know, Israel has no other choice. It's just looking for the opportunity to put an end to it. But if you realize that this is there to stay, we have to realize that it defines Israel. And if it defines Israel, Israel cannot be considered as a democracy when in your backyard there is a tyranny. And we have to realize it. It's one entity today. And the third thing that we should, I think, take into consideration, and that's maybe most relevant for you Europeans, is the strategic decision of Israel and the Jewish communities, led by Israel many years ago, a few years ago, to make a parallel between any criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism. This is now the name of the game all over Europe and the United States. Criminalization of justice seekers. This is unprecedented. I cannot recall one example in history in which people who fought for any kind of freedom, justice, values were criminalized. One might think that Israel is the only democracy and Israel should remain in the occupied territories because the Jews are the chosen people, because Israel had the Holocaust, because Israel is under threat. It's all fine. What is unacceptable is that people who want to raise an alternative voice are becoming criminals all over Europe. Imagine yourself, some of you wouldn't buy products from the sweatshops in Southeast Asia. Others will say, I don't care. But would anyone dream of criminalizing those who don't buy those products because they think those products are produced in immoral conditions? Would anyone dream to criminalize vegans or vegetarians who don't want to buy meat and products of meat? Would anyone think that they should be condemned for this? Do they do something illegal, immoral? You might agree to them, you might disagree. But to criminalize them? Would you ever think that the decision to put sanctions on Russia because of the invasion to Crimea, or to put sanctions on Iran, or to boycott Hamas, which are all decisions which are made by the international community, would anyone think that this should be criminalized? And here we have this unprecedented case in which people are silenced in democracies, in Western liberal democracies, only on a basis of pure manipulation of the Israeli propaganda, which found it so efficient. I don't know who thought about it first. I don't know how Israel is so efficient, but the outcome is unbelievable. Europe is paralyzed, the United States is paralyzed, the media in many cases is paralyzed, because don't you dare to say one word about Israel, because I will label you as an anti-Semite. They are anti-Semites, and anti-Semitism should be fought, no doubt about it. But we got into a vicious circle in which any criticism is by now already perceived as anti-Semite. I read the examples of the IHRA about anti-Semitism, and I couldn't believe it. If you blame some Jewish community or Jewish establishment for being more faithful to Israel than faithful to their own country, you are defined now as an anti-Semite. You have no right to say so. You have no right to criticize Israel. You have no right to criticize the occupation. And that's really a challenge for you much more than for us, because it's all about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And it is time for Europeans, if I may say so, to stand up and not to surrender, and to tell Israel and to tell the Jewish communities, we are against anti-Semitism. Yes, we are. But you will not decide what is anti-Semitic and what not. I have a friend, I'm very proud about this friendship, Roger Waters. Roger Waters is today a very outspoken critic of Israel. We spent some nights with alcohol and some nights without alcohol, and I can tell you, there is not 1 gram in his body which is anti-Semitic. He is a man of conscience, he pays the price of it, he is a man of human rights, of real values. Israel had labeled him as an anti-Semite. The world is labeling him as an anti-Semite. In the United States, in many occasions, he is banned because he is an anti-Semite. Someone has to stand up against it. And I understand that for Europe it is hard. And Germany is a special case. And Europe has a very bad conscience, and maybe rightly so. But having said all this, it is the duty of Europe to stand up. Let's be frank. If Europe carries a responsibility, a moral responsibility for the Holocaust, Europe carries also a moral responsibility for the Palestinian Nakba. Indirect, but by the end of the day, without the Nakba, there wouldn't be a state of Israel. I mean, there's almost no argument about this. Maybe one day, but not in 48. And if the state of Israel created the Nakba and Zionism created the Nakba, Europe carries an indirect responsibility for it. And I don't say that Europe should be blamed for everything, by all means not, and for sure not the young generation. But to be silenced because of the past and not to raise your voice against injustice, against, what are we talking about? It's not about, the minister said it so rightly, it's not about being pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli. Are we in favor of the international law? Yes or no? Are we in favor of the resolutions of international institutions? Yes or no? That's the only thing at stake. Many people tell me always, the situation is very complex. To those people I say, no, it is not complex. It is black and white. Maybe the solution will be complex. But the basic situation is very simple. And those who claim it is very complex are those who want to run away, to break away from the truth. And the truth is that in this part of the Middle East, in this part of the world, there is a people who lives now over 100 years of depression, 52 years of occupation. Believe me, my friends, many of you had visited Palestine. The foreign minister had been in Gaza a few times. Again, one of the very few foreign ministers who bothers to go to Gaza at all. Why would they? It's enough to meet Abbas in Ramallah. Why would they go to Gaza? They are boycotting Gaza. Yeah, this is okay. Boycotting Hamas is okay. But none of us, including you, Mr. Foreign Minister, can imagine ourselves. What does it mean to live under the Israeli occupation? None of us. Because it is about a daily reality, not the bloodshed, not the wars, not what we hear here and there, and there are some outrageous phenomena. The routine, the daily life under occupation, the daily humiliation, the lack of perspective of now third or fourth generation of young people who have no perspective for the future. Last week I met a fisherman from Gaza. Fishing is one of the last resources for finding any kind of jobs in Gaza. Gaza had like 10,000 fishermen, now there are left a few hundreds, and they go to the sea. Israel, which went out from Gaza, as we know, Israel has nothing to do with Gaza. Gaza is free, as we know. Israel don't let those fishermen to go to the sea more than 9 miles. And many times less, and it's really a collective punishment. If they launch rockets, immediately Israel limits the range. By the way, no need to say here that collective punishment is another violation of the international law. It is illegal to put collective punishments. But you know, the international law is something wonderful, but it doesn't concern Israel, because Israel is a special case. This poor fisherman was shot 5 months ago by the Israeli Navy, and he lost his one eye, and the other eye was at risk. He's blind now for 5-6 months. He was begging to get some treatment in Israel. Israel refused. He went to Egypt, but in Egypt they couldn't help him. After many, many efforts of many good Israelis, and obviously there are good Israelis and NGOs, finally he made it last week to come for a checkup in Israel. A fisherman, nothing to do with terror, nothing to do with resistance. A simple fisherman with 3 little children whose only dream in life is to see his children one more time. They wouldn't let his mother accompany him because, you know, a blind person can walk freely to the hospital in Tel Aviv without a company. Why would he need a company? Again, telephone calls, again, yeah, his mother is a potential terrorist because her son is injured, so she will go and put bombs, obvious. So she was refused. So another efforts, finally they let them come. Finally, unfortunately, the doctors couldn't find any solution for him, and he went back to Gaza last Tuesday when I accompanied him. And I thought about, and I keep on thinking about this guy. I mean, his life is finished. He cannot work. He is depressed. He sits at home. He doesn't do anything. He was shot in his face, 15 bullets, rubber bullets, but from a very short range, which can kill also. None of the soldiers will be interrogated or investigated. Obviously, what did they do wrong? That's exactly what we want them to do, to keep security. And security is the unofficial religion of Israel. And on behalf of security, you may do anything you want. Nobody speaks, by the way, Mr. Minister, about security of the Palestinians. Have you ever heard this combination of words, security for the Palestinians? It's always security for Israel, this regional superpower. They deserve security. The Palestinians never, in no political discussions ever, anybody spoke even about security to the Palestinians. Security is always about the one and only victim, which is Israel, obviously. So when I accompanied this fisherman back to Gaza last week, I thought about him. He lives in a refugee camp. So he is already third generation of victims. His parents, his grandparents, him, and his children. No perspective for the future, no income, no nothing. Can we live in peace with it? Can we continue to wait until Israel will make up its mind? And why would Israel make up its mind? And here I must say very frankly with you, don't expect change from within Israel. Israel has no incentive to go for a change. Life in Israel is far too good, brainwash system is far too efficient, and no Israeli statesman would go for any kind of ending the occupation because this will be suicidal for him. This equilibrium in which Israel just gains from the occupation and doesn't pay any price for it, as long as this continues, don't expect change from within. The challenge is to change it. The challenge is to do what the international community knew very well to do with another apartheid system, South Africa. If it's not the international pressure, the apartheid system is still there. If it's not the international tension, South Africa would have been today run by a small minority of white privileged people, and this reality would continue. And the world said no. Because the world say that in our world after World War II, we are not ready to accept an apartheid system. And the same world says now yes to the darling of the West, Israel. This at least should create some question marks. And as long as the world will not make up its mind, and when I say world, I mainly mean the United States and the EU, as long as they will not come to terms and realize that another apartheid system is unacceptable, as long as the world will stop believing that with niceties you will be able to convince Israel. You tried it for 52 years. The United States is trying it. As long as those strategies will not change, the world is part and parcel of another apartheid system in the Middle East. The world is financing it, the world is supporting it, the world is supporting it with weapons, the world is behind it, and the world is part of another apartheid system. This should be on the conscience of any one of us, that by the end of the day, yes, we carry some responsibility. So I'm here today, and I'll finish because I see that you become impatient, Martin, rightly so. We'll have another opportunity to speak in the evening. I really think that occasions like here must be a cause of hope. Because with all the respect, Mr. Foreign Minister, I'm not sure that governments have any intention soon, maybe except of your government, to change the policy. I see where Europe goes, I see where Eastern Europe goes, we see what's going on in the United States, in Brazil, in the Philippines, in other countries. The world does not become a better place, and the world does not become a more sensitive place for human rights, for international law, for humanity. And the role is really now on the shoulders of civil societies, especially in Europe, especially in liberal democracies in Europe. They are the only one who can be a game changer. They can be the only one who can really make a change. It's a long way to go, a very long way to go. But it should start. And it should start by saying no to the Israeli Jewish manipulation of labeling us as anti-Semites. It should start by putting an end to the bluff that Israel is a democracy as long as it contains the occupation. It should start by putting an end to the bluff that the occupation is a temporary phenomena. And if I may say so, and here I'm not sure that everyone will agree with me, it should start also with putting an end to the bluff that the two-state solution is still possible. The two-state solution is a perfect solution. Two peoples are sharing one piece of land. Let's share the land and give self-determination to both peoples. But unfortunately, this train left already the station. And even in Luxembourg, trains never come back to the station. There is another train which will follow them, but they don't go reverse. They don't come back. And the day we will realize that the two-state solution, which is a wonderful solution, I'm very much in favor of it, but the day that we will realize that we are just wasting time on speaking about yesterday's solution, the day that we will realize that we have to change the discourse, this will be the day of the great change. And on this day, we will have to change the discourse and start to speak about equal rights. One person, one voice, a democracy between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. What's wrong in this? What will Israel say against it? Security, Holocaust, chosen people? What will be the excuse to say no to equal rights? And the day that Israel will declare formally that it is against equal rights, this will be the day that the apartheid state will be established also officially and formally. I'm not looking forward for this day. I'd rather see a change taking place. Remember one thing, and by this I'll end because I'm always criticized that I'm too pessimistic and don't leave any place for hope. So two small sources of hope I can suggest here today. Say first that the most crucial, fatal events in history were unexpected. I don't think that anyone in this hall had foreseen the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of Soviet Russia, and the fall of apartheid system in South Africa. And it happened. I guess that if I would have stand here in the late 89 and say, listen guys, in a few months there is no Soviet Russia, there is no apartheid system, there is no Berlin Wall, Martin, you would have never invited me again because you would have seen that I'm out of my mind. Nobody had foreseen it, it happened. Many times we walk in the street and Luxembourg has so many wonderful trees, green trees, and you see all of a sudden a big, strong tree falls and lying on the road. And you don't understand, it looked so healthy and so strong, and it fell. And then you look inside it, and you see it's all rotten from the inside. And my friends, what is more rotten than the Israeli occupation? Thank you very much.